Hi there, my name is Denise and I wanted to talk to you about Hibernate. Um, Hibernate is a tool that is used to map object-oriented programming languages like Java to relational databases like SQL. So in order to accomplish this, a configuration, let's not talk about that first. You need different pieces in order to do this. And one of them is you need a database, obviously, right? So I downloaded my SQL Workbench. Let me see if I can pick up the right one here. Nope, that's not it. Here we go. This is what's called CHAMP. It looks like XAMPP, but it's really, I think it's pronounced CHAMP. Anyways, I took a class a long time ago. I think it was 230, CIT360, and it was front-end development, and we were to download CHAMP. And what came with it was it's a server. It's like a server for your own system, and it included an SQL database in it. So I have a really funky problem here. My buttons are not showing the labels, but they actually do work. And I have looked online as to which button is what, and I screenshotted it, and I have a picture of it so I know which button goes to what. But anyways, first you're going to need a table, and if you've done this, if you've already downloaded CHAMP, then the good chance that you probably already have this. So you don't, either that or you could download it. You probably don't need it. So what I did do was I did download the Workbench because someone told me it would be easier to work with it, and I'm still working with it, kind of crypto. I don't really use it completely how I should. I don't really want to learn Workbench completely for this small amount of thing I have to do. So I basically just typed in the SQL that I needed here, and I created my table. I've got a drop table and create it, and all of that, and I put some data in it and such. So you do need to be able to create yourself a table or two, and you'll need something like Workbench. You can actually even do it in CHAMP as well. There's many different ways, but this is how I did it. So on to the next topic. You need to get libraries into Java in order to be able to do Hibernate. And Maven is, like, as I understand it, it's a big bunch of libraries of all kinds of stuff, like a big repository of libraries. And if you go to their website, Maven repository, and you search for Hibernate, you can get the things that you need from there. And you just basically put the dependencies into this POM file, wherever that is right here. And I basically just put in this Hibernate dependency and also this MySQL connector dependency in order to be able to connect to my database and also have Hibernate know where things are as well. So that Maven will pull in all of that stuff for you. And then another thing that I did do is go into Marketplace, and he suggested installing, or I saw a video, Telesco is a guy, he suggested, slow, installing a plugin for Eclipse called JBoss. And I only did it for just the Hibernate tools, or it's JBoss tools, and it's just for Hibernate. And so I did that, and I guess that's helpful as well. So those are the libraries in which you need. And then to create your project, I basically created a Maven project, which included all of that. So I did new, other, and then they, these usually aren't expanded, but you can find Maven here. A Maven project will create you a whole new project with everything you need in it. So Maven is, the cool thing about Maven is it goes and gets the libraries that you need if you have these dependencies in your POM file. So you don't even have to really know exactly which things you need. So here's my code. Now, in order for Hibernate to understand how to connect to your database, you need the libraries from Maven as such, and the things that I've spoken, you need a database. But there's also this configuration file, okay? And the cool thing is, I think that tools, JBoss tools that he had me, or that I, he recommended bringing in, basically, it just kind of formatted this, and it was a screen that you filled in, basically, the different aspects of that. Now, the plugin is if you search for Telesco, and then plug in for Eclipse for JBoss, or for Eclipse. It's number 5 is the video, and then there's number 4 for Hibernate tutorial Telesco, and it shows the entire setup of what I just basically showed you. So those two things, between those two things, you can basically set up everything that you need in order to create your project. And I'm basically just saying that for a reference, but he actually shows you how to fill this out. There's a couple extra things that come in later. This is how to, if you want to update your database, or you can create it. Creating, if you put create in there, it'll blow away your database and then create it from scratch every time. So you gotta be careful to what you're doing. We put that back to update. And then this, I love this, show SQL true, because it shows you the SQL code that is executed by Hibernate. So you can see exactly what it's doing, to know, to help you troubleshoot what's going on, what things got executed, what things aren't, if you have an exception error, okay? And so this is my code. The one other thing that you do need for Hibernate in order to work is this thing called annotations, okay? And so annotations, I'm trying to read, I had it written down here. The other piece is annotations to put inside the classes. So you make these classes, and my class here is customer. Mm-hmm. You could have another class called airplanes or whatever, but you put these annotations in there, and they look like this squiggly thing, or an @ sign. Is that @ sign? Dot, and then entity. There's other ones like, for instance, this one's ID. There's also one that you could put in there for table. If you don't put table in there, like @table, it will just use this. It'll just default to whatever your class was. So those are the pieces. Now, I have seen people define every last thing with an annotation, and it's a different way of doing it. My guess is as long as you have just the key pieces, it can understand it. Hibernate can understand or connect well enough, and then it uses default names from there on. But like, say if you wanted to use a different name in your code for something versus your table, you'd have to probably put an annotation for that. And that actually, that's the nice thing about me creating this table, is I have named them exactly the same. So that might be something to think about. And I might actually go ahead and make another project doing it differently. But let's look at this thing here. Here's your imports, and basically you import stuff as you go when it requires it. The first thing I'm doing is I am I'm setting up Chris as a object, and I'm filling in the information and setting his ID to this and that and all that. And then this is configuration settings to configure it, Hibernate, so it understands that this is where my configurations are at in this file. You can leave this blank as long as it's exactly the same as this, but I figured why not just put it in there. And then this is add annotation or annotated class, and you're telling it this is customer class. Now, if I added a class like the dog class or the whatever animal class, then you'd have to have another one in here. You'd have to add that on as well, so it knows, okay? And then Hibernate uses, some libraries, APIs called Session Factory. It builds a session and or the session factory, and then it builds a particular session. And here's where I'm trying to save Chris. Oh, and then a transaction as well, because transactions are probably just a little bit lower of a level where anything that you're doing to the database is considered to be a transaction. And in order for it to be considered safe or protected, and that nothing corrupt happens to the database, the transaction has to be aware. So anyways, I go ahead and I save Chris, and then I commit it. Okay, so Chris gets added to the database. At this point here, I'm trying to retrieve a record just using a regular get command. And this is just a session get command versus there's another way with HQL that I'm doing down here. I'm setting my customer class or my to 1004. Well, it knows that Hibernate knows that this is my primary key. How does it know? I'll show you. It knows because of this ID annotation here. It knows that customer ID is a primary key. Okay. And also in my database, I have made it a primary key here. Right here, I actually add primary key customer ID. So I can only have one customer ID of that number. So then it just basically goes and gets the customer with 1000 or 1004, and then it prints it out. And then down here, I'm showing this with HQL, which is Hibernate query language. It's very similar to SQL, but instead of using the actual table names, it's using the class names. Okay, and so I set up. This is the coolest thing. You just set up the query, and you say from customer. That means that from this table.
Name. Unavailable.
And then I'm sorry about the phone call.
Name. Unavailable.
And then I'm creating a list here because I'm going to get all of the records in this database. And so this is an advanced for that basically spins through all of them and prints them out. And then this is using HQL for retrieving a single row. And basically you just say for customer where customer ID equals a particular one. And so, and then you create the object and it puts the unique results in there. And then you print it out, print custo out there. And then you have to close the factory session. So I'm going to, okay, so here's the tricky thing about these. You have to make sure that you like recreate like you blow things away or redo your tables, because if I had Chris Hensworth in here, I would have an error running the program. So every time you go to do something, you have to be aware what state your table is in. So I don't have Chris Hensworth in here, so this will actually run fine. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to save that. I don't know why I had some little change. So here is this is him inserting Chris Hensworth. Here, Hibernate's doing that for me. And then I'm retrieving Elvis. I actually tried to have a sys out statement up here, but then it printed it before Hibernate got a hold of it. So I just took it out. It's no big deal. Anyways, and then let's see. So it's getting Elvis here, and I'm showing the retrieved record of Elvis Presley. He's 1004. And then this is me dumping out the table by printing those out with that for loop. We got Susan Lucci Kelly, Michael, George, Stephanopoulos, Elvis, and then here's Chris Hensworth, where we just added in as the first stop. And then very lastly, here's the row where we just went and got the first, or 100 or 1000 or whatever. And that's Susan Lucci, and you can actually see her right there as well. So, and this is just handling it all differently. Like this was an HQL query, whereas the query up here with Elvis was just using a regular get. So this is it. That's about it. You get the pieces together. It's about setting it up. And then, you know, another thing you could do is set up relationships. Like if I had a customer database, and then I also had something connected to the customer database, like products or something that they bought, or services that whatever it might be. You can set up relationships with that, and there's so much more that you can do with this. And you can actually honestly have the Hibernate create the whole database for you. So right from the beginning, and have it just run down. But I kind of did it this way, and this is just to prove that I know what I'm doing. So, and I could play with it some more, but I have to move on to the next topics because there's so many and there's so little time. So thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.